Let's talk about class diversity in Guild Wars 2. So I just got done with the tier lists, and I find myself thinking, wow, every single build in the game right now is good. It's actually hard to play something that isn't good right now. Kind of interesting. And someone then brought up, hey, you should go take a look at Guild Wars 2 Wingman. For those who don't know, Guild Wars 2 Wingman is a site where users can submit logs for raid bosses, fractals, and strikes, and all that kind of good stuff. And it compiles all of that and gives you a bunch of really interesting data. And here is the profession popularity chart for Guild Wars 2. And take a look at this. Historically, we've had some rough times, but look at the balance patch right now. I think my general sentiments are actually reflected in how players are playing. So you can see the history of the game down at the bottom. These are all the little different balance patches that have happened. And here is our most recent one. And look at that. Your ideal number for each profession would be around 11%, right? A little bit over that because there are 9 professions. So, 100 divided by 9 gives you about 11%. And look at this. Almost everything is weirdly in line here, actually. The only two underrepresented professions are Warrior and Elementalist. And you might be thinking, it's because they're bad. No, I think there are 2 factors here. One, I think Elementalist is perceived to be difficult. So even though it actually is very strong, Tempest and Weaver and Catalyst are all very strong right now. I think a lot of players simply don't play them. Kind of the same for Warrior. I think players don't play Bladesworn so much, even though it's super, super strong and some pretty cool RP as well. Kind of the same with Berserker, I want to say. Spellbreaker really surprises me that it's a bit underrepresented. I think it's because it is a bit weird on certain encounters. It has a few class bugs that hold it back on certain encounters. That might be a part of it, despite the fact that I think it actually is one of the top picks for a damage build. Just like flat out right now. Very, very good. Very, very good. But I think the other factor that actually holds Elementalist and Warrior back is that they kind of lack on the support department. If we look through at all of these builds, you'll notice that stuff like Scourge does really well, has a heal build, has an Alak build that works super, super well, right? We look at Mech, right? Has heal Mech, power Alak Mech, right? You have all, then you have the DPS builds on top of that, right? Same with Firebrand, same with Herald, same with Spectre, same with Druid now as well, right? Lots of kind of quite flexible builds that can fit into groups really, really easily, and I think players are kind of naturally drawn into that. I think that the buffs to Tempest will actually rectify this, and I'd love to see heal Tempest in particular pushed pretty hard. It's fallen behind a little bit because of power creep compared to other options, but I think when Warrior gets the new staff weapon, we actually might see this issue get rectified. So I think Warrior will have to wait a little bit before the numbers start to go up again there, because again, I think it really lacks that support build, that support element that a lot of, the game ultimately kind of revolves around now at this stage in terms of group PvE. Very exciting stuff. And what's interesting about this is that it has actually never been this good, right? If you look historically, it has been a bit of a mess, to be perfectly honest with you. And you know what's even more interesting? I thought, but surely in Fractals it's still a complete mess, right? Surely in Fractals it doesn't work out. And I was actually really surprised to see this. If we go over to Fractals, it's actually pretty good. And bear in mind, it's not perfect because Fractals are more extreme. They tend to hyper favor certain builds because they, you can counter mechanics very well. Aegis, for example, stability is very dominant. But now that ArenaNet has started to share those things out a little bit, look at that compared to how it's been historically. Seriously, isn't that remarkable? I think builds such as Heal Herald, being improved on there, like Renegade being stabilized, Scrapper being brought in, Mechanist, like Weaver buffs, Reaper buffs, Scourge buffs, Virtuoso buffs, all this kind of stuff. And don't get me wrong, Fractals I think are still a little bit messy in terms of what sees play. Maybe not exactly where we want it to be just yet, but I have to actually give CMC and the balance team, credit where it's due. And I think we should as well. Pretty damn good across the board. And I think players now are going to have an easier time than ever before to play the builds that they actually want and the kind of play style that they enjoy. Strike missions are actually similarly pretty good. A little bit less so. I think strikes, in a lot of ways, are almost, particularly strike challenge modes, are the most rigid in terms of the metagame. Certain strike missions, I think, really notably, stuff like Harvest Temple and Kining Overlook, hyper favor certain builds, notably Virtuoso and Scourge, right? And, of course, Herald is also incredibly, incredibly good in strike missions. Same with Mechanist. So that's kind of an encounter design thing, more so than a balance thing, I want to say. But, yeah, really, really cool stuff. across the board, actually. Like, everything actually is good. We're in a pretty good spot. Now, balance is not the same as tuning. I would say that we're pretty power-crept right now. Things are a bit over the top, but, you know, again, it's Guild Wars 2 in 2023, okay? You know, that ship has sailed. We're probably never going back at that point. But yeah, I think the balance team has done a good job here. I think one thing that a lot of people point out is, but, oh, not every elite specialization is widely represented. And I think that that is definitely true, but I think there are actually really good explanations there. So the first, I would say, is that in my opinion, people don't main an elite spec very often. They'll typically main a profession. And that's not to say people don't. You know, there's going to be like, but I only play, you know, I only play Reaper. I played it since Age of 10. And yeah, there are definitely players like that. But I think primarily players go, yeah, I play Necro, I play Ellie, I play Engie, I play Guardian, I play Rev. And that means that I think players are drawn to kind of whatever specialization is best for the role that they enjoy within their profession, right? And that's why you do see some very different. For example, Rangers play Soul Beast and Druid, right? Because they form different roles. Although with the advent of Condi Druid, I think that'll be interesting to observe that dynamic there. And it's kind of the same with Necromancer, right? Like, yeah, Reaper and Scourge both do well because they serve different purposes. But, you know, you'll notice that in some of the other ones, like one will kind of dominate, right? Because it's very good at everything. You know, you can look at Engineer, right? It's very good in all of its roles. Heal mech, DPS mech, and of course, hybrid mech as well, like the, you know, the DPS alack mech and so on. So like that's where, you know, you've got to kind of spread things out. They've tried to do that with Scrapper, I think, somewhat effectively. But yeah. Also with, you know, Virtuoso. Ooh, yeah. And Chrono's coming back, though, right? You got to stay tuned. So I think that's, like, why this typically happens. And also, yeah, some elite specializations kind of compete with themselves in a very extreme way. And, you know, they all do damage, right? Or they all have one specific function. Or they simply aren't really fleshed out. You know, let's not mess about here. Like, elite specialization design in Guild Wars 2 has very historically been, ooh, wouldn't that be kind of cool? It hasn't really been done with balance in mind. It's only now that we're actually starting to do that, I would say. And so there are just some elite specializations that have kind of fallen by the wayside, but, you know, they are being worked on, right? We've actually seen significant improvements in that regard in taking these elite specializations and forging them into a new role, right? And continued iteration has very much made that happen. You know, we see that with Druid, we see that with Scrapper, we now see that with Tempest coming through. Chronomancer is very much on the up and up as well, simultaneously. And I think there are some exciting builds brewing with Warrior, actually. I think it will be a couple of patches before we see that really come to fruition, but it's absolutely, you know, it's bubbling under the surface in the cauldron that CMC is stirring, right? I definitely stay tuned on that, 100% actually. But yeah, I think that's basically all I really wanted to comment here, actually. I just wanted to point this out after the tier list, right? Because, you know, I was like, oh, man, what is going on here? I do love a good tier list, but I also do love a good graph at the same time there as well. So, I don't know. Maybe you find this interesting. Maybe you find this surprising. Like, oh, man, you know, I thought the balance was really bad right now, but actually, it turns out it's actually rather good. And I definitely like my goal with talking about this and spreading this message is, yeah, you can play what you want. I think that players often feel that they are kind of forced into playing certain builds, or that the meta is quite rigid. And don't get me wrong, I think that some people play rigidly, some people play a little bit more fluidly. There's always like different groups and so on that behave in different ways. But I think it's absolutely fascinating to note that, yeah, we live in a time of freedom in Guild Wars 2, Interior. And, well, let's see what happens when the expansion drops. That's where stuff's going to get crazy with all the weapon training and so on, with a whole bunch of crazy builds that are going to end up popping up. Although I think that actually might disrupt profession balance, or sort of rather intra-profession balance, so as in like within the profession. Like I think certain elite specs might go crazy in terms of their performance within a profession. I think it might not actually affect the overall balance that much, or disrupt it that much necessarily, but hey, who knows? Well, that's probably not true, actually. It's probably a little bit true, but maybe not entirely true. There's gonna be some pretty wacky numbers that pop up, that's for sure. But anyway, that's it. Let me know what you think. Hope you've enjoyed this little analysis, little breakdown, little investigation situation here. You know, I love data. It's quite nice to look at, isn't it? This kind of mosaic. You know, you can see the rise of the Emperor here. Do you guys remember when Mech and Firebrand were 50% of all play rate? Yeah. You know, I remember that. That wasn't great. Some dark times for warriors here as well. But anyway, I want to know actually. You tell me, what is the most amusing point of balance? Where do you want to be on the graph? Okay, are you an Ellie main? You want to go back to Elementalist dominating everything? Are you a Scourge main? You want to be playing 6 Scourges on every boss? Well, I guess that's actually now, to be fair. But anyway, I want to know, where is your favorite point in time on the profession popularity graph for all the different game modes? Oh, look at fractals. You guys like that bit? And of course, just let me know what you think on the overall balance for the game. Hope you enjoyed this little quick video. Thanks for watching. Hit the follow button, hit the sub button, follow me on all the social media, leave a comment, get in there. That's it, gamers. Thanks for watching. Take it easy, and I'll see you next time.